Welcome to Sky High Reef Presents. This week we're going to be discussing how to build a beautiful zoa garden like I have set up here inside of my nano tank. So this week we just really wanted to showcase a lot of our zoas and really get into the discussion about our best practices needed to build a successful zoa garden. Things like buying colors versus buying names, what my advice would be for new reefers when building a garden, and just really try to establish what it takes to set this up as a good base for any reef tank. A lot of reef tanks you see have a lot of zoas. Zoas can be a great thing, a great addition to your reef tank, or they can be almost as a pest coral, depending on the species and what color variation that you get. They can sometimes be overgrown. That's why building a garden at the base of your reef is always best practice. In this video, in the background, you're going to see a lot of different, just basic color zoas, nothing too fancy, just so you can get an idea of what a zoa garden could look like and what the variety of colors and contrasting corals that you can have with them, without them, next to them, which will grow faster, which will grow slower, what it means to have a super high-end zoa inside of your tank, and what the expectation should be for it. For a new reefer, when building a zoa garden, I think the best idea is to have contrasting colors. Shoot for colors and zoas that have good growth rates, so that way you can go ahead and build out a good base to your zoa garden. As you get further along in the hobby, you can start investing in more expensive zoa pieces, and then you can kind of place them where you want to amongst the base of colors that you've already developed with the cheaper ones. A lot of the cheaper zoas are cheaper just because they grow faster. Most things in the hobby, if it grows super fast, it usually costs a lot less. But when buying something like a GMK at $250 a polyp, you don't really want to place all your bets into that one basket, so to speak. With $250, you can get a really good zoa garden going, a really good base. And I also believe that when you're talking about corals, yes, super high-end corals look great, but a lot of really fully grown, mature colonies of cheaper zoas, especially in a garden format, look just as good. 9 times out of the 10, most people that walk up to your tank that don't know what a GMK is, they're gonna look at the cheap purple one first. That's always the case. They always like the things that you think are the cheaper ones or you think are not as nice, when in reality is perception. And contrasting colors is what you're shooting for when building that garden. It's step number 1. Get as many colors as you can, as many variations as you can, so that way you can go ahead and build out that base. As you purchase high-end corals, 9 times out of 10, you're probably going to want to separate those frags because you don't want the other zoas to overcrowd them, as they may take longer to grow. Now, there are some downsides to having zoas. Zoas can have a lot of pests, aptasia, all sorts of reef life on plugs, and make sure to dip and inspect them. They do have zoa-eating nudibranchs. A lot of zoas, when purchased, do have aptasia on them. The other thing to consider is palitoxins. Palitoxins are a real thing, and they definitely do affect everyone in different ways. So be sure to work with caution and to know your limits. If you're a highly allergic person to everything, then I'll probably wear gloves, I'll probably not cut them, I'll probably leave them alone. For myself, the worst reaction I've ever gotten is some of the tattoos on my hands. They do swell up sometimes when I have my hands in the tank. So it definitely is a real thing, and you just want to make sure that you're very aware of what's going on around you. So there are things that you can do to help promote growth in your zoas. For me, what I found is gluing frag plugs closer to the glass, so that way the zoas can come off of the plug and onto the glass. I find that they grow really quickly on smooth surfaces, and the opposite. I would also glue zoa frags next to rock rubble or on rock itself. I find that once off the plug, the zoas usually take off, whether it be on rock or whether it be on glass. Now, the downside to growing zoas onto rock is it's really hard to frag. You're gonna have to pull the entire rock and cut the entire rock, and usually that's not realistic for a lot of people. Growing on a bare bottom tank like I'm doing in my nano, once they come over side of that plug and they're gonna mat out onto the glass, it makes it a lot easier to be able to get frags down the line. So that's the path I'm going with. For me in this nano tank, the end goal is that the entire bare bottom is going to be filled with zoas. There will be no sand in the tank. There will be some chalices and LPS, but like I said, there are some corals that can live side by side next to zoas, without there being any issues. So once grown in, these Zoa gardens can be a very beautiful addition to any reef tank. They're very easy to maintain. They have a low cost point to buy in to build these gardens. Depending on the species and color variation you get, you can have that full reef tank look very quickly, but be careful because they will encroach upon other corals. But overall, they're a beautiful addition, and I think every reef tank should have one, especially in a nano tank where you can fill up an entire space really quickly. So thanks again everyone for watching and enjoying the video. Please subscribe, like, and leave a comment below.